Most people don't fail because they're lazy. They fail because they try to change their entire life overnight. They wake up one morning, decide they're going to become disciplined, hit the gym 6 times a week, meditate, quit social media, read 50 pages a day. But just 2 weeks later, they're right back where they started. That's because the secret to becoming unstoppable isn't massive action. It is actually just tiny decisions repeated consistently over years. Think about Batman for a second. Bruce Wayne didn't become Batman in one day. He became Batman through thousands of small actions repeated consistently for over a decade. And that's exactly why the Japanese philosophy of Kaizen might be one of the most powerful self-improvement frameworks ever created. After the Second World War, Japan was in ruins. Entire cities had been reduced to rubble, the economy had collapsed, the industries that once powered the nation had been crippled, and the future looked quite uncertain at best. To many people around the world, the idea that Japan could one day become an economic powerhouse seemed almost impossible. And while most of us will never experience devastation on that scale, some of us know what it feels like to look at our own lives and think, how did things get so bad? Maybe you've accumulated years of bad habits. Maybe you've started and quit more times than you can count. Maybe you've made promises to yourself that you've never kept. You just haven't become the person you thought you would be by now. And in some ways, your life can begin to resemble a ruined city, just messy, overwhelming, and difficult to rebuild. And in such moments, the natural response is to believe that the only solution is dramatic action, to tear everything down and start over on Monday, and completely reinvent yourself overnight. But that's not how Japan was rebuilt. In the decades following the war, Japanese industries embraced the philosophy known as Kaizen, which literally means change for the better. Rather than searching for one revolutionary breakthrough, they focused on countless small improvements. Workers at every level were encouraged to ask a simple question: how can we make this just a little better than it was yesterday? One process improved, then another. One inefficiency was removed, then another. Tiny changes repeated consistently over time began to compound. And slowly what once looked impossible became a reality. Factories became efficient, products became more reliable, businesses became more competitive. The same nation that had been written off eventually became home to some of the most respected companies in the world. And I think there's a profound lesson in that. Because if an entire nation devastated by war and facing seemingly insurmountable odds can rebuild itself through the power of small, consistent improvements, then perhaps there's hope for us too. Maybe we don't need to suddenly become the perfect versions of ourselves by tomorrow morning. Maybe all we need to do is take one small step in the right direction. Read just one page, do one workout, pray one prayer, replace one bad habit with something slightly better. Clean that one corner of your room, do that one task that you have been avoiding. Because the goal of Kaizen isn't perfection, it's progress. And progress, however small, has a remarkable way of compounding over time. Japan wasn't rebuilt in a day, but if you commit to becoming just a little better today than you were yesterday, and then repeat this process for long enough, you may look back one day and realize that the person you always wanted to become has quietly emerged through thousands of small acts of improvement. That is the promise of Kaizen. At this point, you might be wondering, why does Kaizen even work? Well, one of the biggest reasons is that it lowers the resistance. You see, the human mind naturally resists things that are highly demanding. That's why so many people fail when they try to change their lives overnight. They do all these fancy things relying purely on motivation. And for a while, it does work. But the thing about motivation is that it is a temporary resource. It is bound to run out. Eventually, life gets busy, energy levels drop, the excitement wears off. And because the changes they were trying to sustain required so much effort, they slowly drift back into being the person they were. Kaizen, on the other hand, takes a completely different approach. Instead of asking, what's the biggest change I can make? It asks, what's the smallest step that I can take? And when the action is small, so is the resistance. Reading one page doesn't feel overwhelming. Doing 5 push-ups doesn't require you to listen to a motivational speech. Writing one sentence doesn't trigger procrastination. The goal of Kaizen isn't to set world records or impress people on social media. The goal is to simply show up. And trust me, something remarkable begins to happen when you start showing up repeatedly. Your identity begins to change. You stop thinking of yourself as someone who is just trying to exercise, but you now think of yourself as someone who exercises. You stop seeing yourself as someone who's trying to read and become someone who actually reads. The resistance that was once there slowly fades away because the behavior has become part of who you are. And I have experienced the power of Kaizen firsthand in my journey as a content creator. When I first started this YouTube channel, my goal wasn't to create a masterpiece. It wasn't to have the perfect editing, it wasn't to have cinematic shots, flawless delivery, or hundreds of thousands of views. My only goal was to show up and speak to the camera. In fact, if you look back at some of my earliest videos, they are incredibly primitive compared to what I make today. Like, here's a clip from my very first video.
So I'm 25 years old and I grew up in a time where most things that are essential to human survival have pretty much already been taken care of. Like, I don't have to hunt to get my next meal. Neither do I have to walk kilometers to some water source to get drinking water.
See how unpolished that was? But that's exactly the point. Because if I had convinced myself that my first video needed to be absolutely perfect, I probably would have never started this channel. I would have spent months overthinking, months comparing myself to creators who had been doing this for decades, months waiting until I felt ready. But Kaizen gave me permission to be a beginner, to make something imperfect, to focus on consistency over excellence. And through repetition, improvement just happens naturally. One video taught me how to speak more clearly, another taught me how to tell better stories, another improved my editing, another improved my thumbnails. None of these changes happened overnight. These were the results of hundreds of tiny improvements compounded over time. And that, my friend, is the real power of Kaizen.
Bro, this is like my 400th video or something. So it basically took me 400 practice runs before I could make something like this. So be gentle on yourself and go to the gym. Even if all you can do is just lift the damn bar. Go to that martial arts class. Even if you fight like pick this and that and this, start that business. Even if you don't have the perfect business model or the logo. Don't worry about who is going to say what, because this isn't even your final form yet. So who really cares? People are not going to remember all these versions of you anyways. But it is vital that you start now. As always, in case no one has told you this today, I am rooting for you.